We have a quorum. I will call to order the regular meeting of the Police Commission today, Monday, May 9th at 5:07 p.m. Let us start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to the next item of our agenda, correspondence. I will turn it over to Commissioner Schweizer to share the correspondence with us.
Okay. Police Commission, May 9th, 2022. Summary of letters received from resident to Officer Bonaconti, Officer Arnold, Dispatch Halshe. The resident was dealing with a difficult ex-partner. The resident commended the actions of these officers for consistently following up with her and helping her obtain a protective order. Dispatcher Halshe lives in the same complex and did not judge me, but to let him know if I feel unsafe. Next, resident to Sergeant Harrington, Officer Russell, Officer Rosa. This resident wanted to thank the responding officers with their incredible understanding and patience while responding to help with their son who's autistic. The officers remained calm and interacted with their son in a caring and empathetic manner. Next, resident to ACO Rudowitz. Each time I've interacted with him, he has been extremely knowledgeable, very helpful, and gone the extra mile to ensure my concerns and questions are resolved. Next, to Officer Crowley from resident. The resident was dealing with a harassment situation from a disgruntled ex-employee. Officer Crowley worked diligently for months building a case and keeping in contact with the resident. Not only did he handle the case in an exemplary fashion, but he did it with great compassion, empathy, and kindness. Next, received from resident to Officer Crowley. A resident had been involved in a domestic dispute and Officer Crowley had responded. After, the resident thanked Officer Crowley for assisting me in such a calm and respectful manner while I was having an anxiety attack during a not so great situation. I can say that you chose the right line of work. Next, received from resident Officer Capozzali. A resident's child was involved in a car accident and commended the Simsbury Police Department for their quick response and the way they spoke to their daughter. You were polite and reassuring to my daughter, who was very upset and now is not scared to continue driving. I definitely attribute that to the way you talked to her. Next, from resident to Officers Harrington, Officer Robles Claudio, and Dispatch Everest. Resident had called concerns about vehicles passing their children's bus when the red lights were blinking and the stop sign was out. She commended Dispatch Everest for her kindness and promptly passing along her concerns to an officer. The resident praised Officer Harrington for her prompt follow-up and Officers Robles for keeping an eye on the bus stop in the following days. End of letters.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the approval of minutes from our March 14th, 2022 meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes as written.
Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
None.
No.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
And the minutes are good. Commissioner Grant is here.
What's yours down?
Started recording me. All right, we'll give a slight pause while they get up here.
There's another staff member here, but she didn't know what the meeting was either. Hi, everyone.
Hello, hello.
Tanisha.
How's it going?
Great.
We just approved the minutes. Okay. The next item on our agenda is old business. Does anyone have any old business they wish to discuss? All right, moving on. The next item on the agenda is reports, chairperson's report. Our budget passed, I think everybody knows that. That's the gist of my report. May 3rd, the voters turned out in just huge waves of like 4 people. No, I'm being sarcastic, but the budget did pass, so I will let the chief touch on how now we will be going forward with our hiring of the new officers and so forth.
If you'd like, I can sort of mention that in my report.
Perfect, so I will turn it over to you for the chief's report.
Great. Let's see, officers Samantha Rosa and Jeff Romer were released from our field training and evaluation program during the second week of April. Just as an illustration, both officers Rosa and Romer applied in the department in March of 2021. They were hired in June 21. They went to the police academy. They graduated at the end of December, and they were in our training program up through second week of April. So that's a 13-month process for somebody who is not certified. We have conducted preliminary interviews and a written exam to fill the animal control officer position.
Sorry, 1 second, on that one.
Yep.
Is there any slack in the lines that could be taken out of that timeline, or is that was just about as fast as it goes?
That is about as fast as it goes, yeah. Unless the officer is already certified either here in Connecticut or in another jurisdiction where our post would accept their certification, that is like as streamlined as possible. You know, March, and then they had interviews almost right away, and then to be hired for June is really quick.
And then when did they start the training?
So they were hired in June, and I believe the academy started in June. Yeah.
Wow.
Was it June?
And
Yeah, right after, 2 days after they got hired.
from previous discussions, I understand that the training is actually one of the choke points in the timeline. So that happened to be actually fortuitous that they were able to start
It was.
right then.
It was. Yeah, because it could be months later before there's a slot open in the academy. There may even be, could even go a whole lot longer than that. There are jurisdictions that have not been able to get people into the police academies because either there are so few academies or there are so many people who want to get in. But yeah, that was a quick process.
Yeah, and here we are,
13 months later.
We spit out a qualified officer.
Yep, and they went through our training. Once they graduated from the academy, they went through our training as scheduled. There were no delays in that.
Sure.
It used to take, years back, you could take up to a year just to hire somebody, as far as the whole process went, and it's been so.
Yeah, even to your point there, March to June is fairly quick. And that's,
It is.
Yeah.
it's 12 weeks or so.
Look at all the different, things that have to get done, that's about as quick as it can be done, effectively, speaking. And then the timelines for the academy and the FTO, those are mandated, from the academy, it's mandated by the state, so there's really no way to shrink that. That's what it is what it is. So that's really the quickest we could probably get somebody that's not certified.
And was there some kind of a extended holiday break in there that we wouldn't see in other years if you started earlier in the year?
No, so there are times when we can insert a 4-day training, and we did in this particular case. So the officers go to a regional training for their annual recertification. In West Hartford, we use West Hartford. Many different towns go to West Hartford. So during their field training portion, so after they graduated from the police academy, they both spent 4 days in West Hartford, which was an option for us, but if we have the opportunity to do that, we will. It's good reinforcement on some of the things that they learn in the academy and some of the things that they learn in the field here. But there was no extended
great
vacation or
Okay.
anything. Yeah.
onto the vet.
And they're doing really well.
Yeah, good.
I've, unrelated, I've heard good feedback on Officer Rosa. I mentioned this, she was patrolling the baseball fields and multiple people mentioned that it was kind of neat to see an officer, so.
Yeah.
Positive feedback.
Very good.
And one of the letters was pertaining to Officer Rosa.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
So with the animal control position, we have secondary interviews scheduled. So we're moving along with that process, but it has been a slow process for us. The services are being covered right now by our patrol officers, just not to the expertise and the degree that Mark Rudowitz was able to deliver. As you remember, he was a wildlife nuisance, or he had a wildlife nuisance permit. He had a trapping license, so our officers clearly don't have that, but they're responding to the bear calls, dog complaints, the other animal calls.
Do the candidates, are there any of the candidates have either of those licensing?
Not that I'm aware of.
The bears definitely know that he is going.
Yeah.
They definitely.
Let's see. So we have had one officer who has been out since March for non-work related medical reason and is expected to return maybe August or September. Another officer will be out for an expected 2 months or so for a non-work related medical reason. We did post the job announcements for the 2 new positions that were authorized through this budget process. Again, we're using policeapp.com, so it's policeapp.com for the announcement portion of it and the actual written tests and the application process. There's currently no closing date on it. We're going to run this for a while and see how the numbers come in. And the announcement was also posted on our Facebook page at the Simsbury CT Police Department.
And so far, you've had some response, no response.
We've had some,
Yes.
and we're accepting, somebody very, very new with no certification, and also officers who are.
And typically, how long are you compelled to keep the window open, and how long will you keep it open?
Yeah, so it's varied in the past. If it's just sort of trickling in, we will keep it open for a while so we can get a decent sized pool. If we are so lucky to start seeing a lot of applicants, then we will close it.
So there's no mandated.
There's no.
It has to be open for a certain amount of time for.
No, we've done both sort of in the past when we had several vacancies to fill all at one time. We've just kept it open. I think there was one time where it may have been open for like 8 months or so.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of positions to fill. So I'm hoping, we take a look at when the written test is given, and we want to make sure there's at least 1 or 2 opportunities, and that's usually, twice a month they give that opportunity for a written test. So we'll keep it open for a little bit. Just a quick update on our motor vehicle thefts. There have been a total of 3 this calendar year. Catalytic converter thefts, we've had a total of 19 this year. Most of them all from Hoffman Auto on Route 44.
Have they slowed down?
No. The car thefts have, definitely.
And so the 19 thefts seems to be a high number, and I'm assuming they've got cameras on their parking lots and that sort of thing.
Yep. So there are things that they have done, and there are recommendations that we have provided to them and to other businesses. What has happened to them is one night they find 5 or 6 missing. So as opposed to what was happening sort of in the past, one would be taken from either this business or a residence, and one from over here. They've gone to Hoffman's and they've taken 3 at a time, 5 at a time. And so those numbers obviously quickly go up. What we have done now for 2 months was put officers there on a very regular basis and the numbers are starting to go down. I don't know if, I'm assuming that is in direct relation, but, we don't know for sure.
And is there any opportunity, any chance that we've got some kind of an inside job situation here where
It's so
a
quick.
mechanic is making it happen?
It's so, anything's possible, but it's so
Yeah.
quick to take these, other investigators have found that, using battery operated Sawzalls, it just takes about 3 minutes. You get underneath the car, clip, clip, and you're out of there. So
Sure.
it's a very quick theft.
How would one even know that it was missing if they're not driving the vehicle?
They probably wouldn't unless
Started up.
you start it up, or if they happen to find something, that was not normally left behind.
Oh,
Sometimes they're jacked up on like milk crates or, but typically that's when we typically review. If they have to get up enough to get underneath the car, sometimes they jack it up.
And they've been going for like the larger vehicles.
And how about statewide, on the back end, do we see sales of catalytic converters? Are we able to attack the problem from?
Yeah. So there was some legislation that
Yeah.
went through,
Yeah.
this term, and I don't know if, I'm assuming the consensus is they think that this is going to change some behavior, but they were really targeting the metal shops.
Yeah.
Where people would be cashing those in. One proposal was to require serial numbers on them, which is, can't really happen on a local state level. You can't require a manufacturer of a vehicle to do that, but the other one is further identifying or not accepting a catalytic converter unless you actually have the vehicle that it goes with, if you're junking it or something, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly where they ended, but there was some legislation on it.
also, the people who would be purchasing them are supposed to give them a check, but they can't. So get identification, so not pay them in cash for it. But to give them a check and get identification.
Very much like the move they did with a lot of pawn shops and that type of activity, where they're requiring photo ID, they're also requiring them to hold on to those for X number of days before they resell. They're trying that.
So is 19, where do we stand statewide? Is 19, are we actually under the norm, or are we above it, or?
I don't know. If I had to guess today, I would say we are under the norm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then going back to the automobile thefts, that's trended down.
It has, except, all of last year, it was definitely down. But if we took a look at last year, we had 4 in the same time period last year. We have 3 this year. But last year, we ended with 9. So hopefully this year we'll end with less than that.
Yeah.
And the year before that, we had a strange trend of nothing really happening the first few months, and then it went through the roof.
Okay.
So hoping this will be a.
That was when COVID last, I'm trying to mentally, that was when COVID was really hitting hard, okay. Lost track of time.
The Memorial Day Parade is coming up. There's actually 2 parades on Monday, May 30th. First parade is in Terriffill, starting at 9 a.m. And that ends at St. Bernard Cemetery with a ceremony. If the weather is not cooperative, that ceremony will be moved over to Trinity Church. The second parade starts at 1:30 p.m. on Owensbrook Boulevard, right at Route 10, and goes south on Route 10 to Jim Gallagher Way, followed by a ceremony at the Simsbury Veterans Memorial at the entrance to the library. May is National Bike Month. We will be handing out safety headlights in order to help cyclists be seen, and a very traditional cyclist bell, so the bicyclists can be heard.
That's very exciting.
Yeah.
Where are we handing those out?
At just different events.
Okay.
Yeah, we were trying to plan a bike rodeo where you do a bit of an inspection on a bike, but we weren't able to pull that together for the month. But-
Anything with the schools and the walk bike back to school?
So we are participating in those every year. There are 3 that are coming up in this month, and then 1 at the beginning of June. Simsbury Social Services was able to help us obtain funds through the Youth Service Bureau grant, and we're purchasing some child bike helmets for those who either may be less fortunate or were not able to purchase a bike helmet. So we'll have a small inventory of those to hand out if need be. And then the only other event I have to report coming up is that Public Works is hosting a Touch-A-Truck event at their facility on Town Forest Road on Saturday, May 14th. And that is from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And we will have a vehicle or two at the event. That's all I have for my report.
All right. Any questions? Any additional?
I do, as it pertains to this.
Okay, well then let's move on to the consolidated monthly
Oh.
report.
I'm sorry.
That's okay,
Am I
no.
moving ahead?
Now I'm moving on
Always moving
to
ahead.
Roman numeral 2.
Okay. So, on February, I noticed there was a mistake in the totals of the arrests.
Yep.
And then it seemed like it could have possibly carried over to March, but I wasn't 100% sure.
Yep,
So,
we caught that too late to come up with an
Okay.
exact answer and fix that for you, but we'll get that.
all right.
Yep.
I think that was the only thing. I think that was it. Oh, and on suspension days too. Suspension. For March.
Oh, yeah, it's 0.
Okay.
I feel like I want to take Mike's seat for a second to say that this was a little confusing. But I don't know, I had a little trouble following. But it could have been that I just didn't have enough coffee as well in terms of like looking at it to see the periods. That part was I was struggling big time with that. And I'm not sure how you can make it clearer, so I'm not gonna trouble you with trying to figure it out because I couldn't figure it out myself. But it was a little hard to follow, so.
Any different than months past, or just?
I don't know, it just,
I feel like it's always been this way.
it has, but confusing?
No, it's
Oh.
always been this format.
You thought you had support on that right there.
That's what I'm saying, I'm like taking Mike's, because Mike always is the one that says, can you kind of tweak this a little bit?
Yeah.
But, no, it is, it was just for some reason, it just, I don't know what it was.
And not that it requires, or, not that we shouldn't change it, but this format has been used probably since about 2008.
I could have just
But
really been having
it's-
not enough coffee.
Yep,
That could've been what it
if
was.
we're looking for different information or a different format, then we can talk about that and see what we can do.
I probably just need this morning, that's all.
Any questions on the incident statistics report? Anything here look a
Out
out
of
of whack?
whack. And any trends on the consolidated that are alarming? Yeah.
How's our overtime? I haven't found it yet in the form.
We are roughly 40,000 over our overtime.
Oh yeah, there it is.
So as-
Boom.
Actually, less than predicted at this point. And everything else looks pretty good.
You're saving a lot on animal control, so use our heads.
Anyone else have any questions?
All right, so Chief, I kind of want to dive into it, just not to poke the bear here, because I don't have an issue with the way we are doing motor vehicle stops. I think that what we're doing is excellent, and so I just want to unpack it so that we can capitalize on it a little bit more. Is why I bring up the topic. So, just to review the tape here, Simsbury, we do a very high volume of traffic stops, and that results in a big number. But the reality is, we only give maybe 5% of those are people people that are stopped are given tickets.
Yeah.
So this is an excellent way for us to engage the community and enforce our traffic policies and to see if there's other things that are happening. And from our discussions that we've had, my understanding is our number is extremely high compared to the surrounding towns. So they're actually benefiting from our traffic stops because people transit through the towns, one to the next. But I'm curious, how do they get away with not doing traffic stops? Why the disparity?
So the number disparity was during last year.
Was strictly during COVID.
Strictly during COVID. So years before that, I don't think that there was that huge disparity in most of the surrounding communities. Maybe one or two here or there. But that was pretty unique, I think, to 2021 because of the pandemic. And how, I can't really answer your question about how they get away with that or not. I mean, it's just.
And it may be a difference in strategy, or it may have been a manpower issue. I'm not sure.
It could be, but it's also been a difficult process for us to make sure that our numbers are respectful. At times, just like everybody else, there's different levels of worries on the pandemic, on COVID. Like if you polled any of the officers, you'd have, one during 2020, 2021 that would say, I'm trying to stay away from everybody. I don't want to get this. And then you may have another one that is much more relaxed about that and feels more comfortable. So, dealing with 39 officers, you have 39 different areas of comfort or views on this. So, it hasn't been easy to keep those numbers where they are, and some officers were still,
particularly without a designated traffic officer.
Yeah, and the interesting part about the designated traffic officer is that they don't get pulled to investigations and to other things, and they're able to focus on traffic. Not that they won't go to a medical call, because if they're needed, they're going to go, but their focus can be on traffic-related issues, and not just traffic stops, but talking to a neighborhood about how that we can potentially slow traffic down, or why we're not able to reduce the number of cars in their neighborhood, or locations of signs, recommendations for replacing signs that don't have maybe the reflectivity that we're looking for. But they can focus on those things. They can put out our traffic study equipment, so we can find out what is the average speed, what is the 85th percentile speed of cars going through here. When is our troublesome time? Like maybe we have most cars falling within the accepted speed limit at this time of day, but at this time we don't. So that takes up a lot of time. But like that's one of the reasons why we are trying to make that happen again. It's not just for the car stops, but the car stops is really a big part.
Sure, the safety and understanding our flows and all that kind of other surrounding.
And as far as the citations, that's probably been very much our mode for decades. And I like to keep the discretion with the officers as much as possible. The end game is to change driving behavior. And if the officer feels that, given all the circumstances that happened on that car stop, that a ticket is going to be the thing that is really going to change that behavior, then a ticket is issued. If the officer feels that it's a warning, a verbal warning, whatever it may be, then I like to leave that discretion with them. During discussions on things, we sort of start to understand what those acceptable parameters are, because if a car is doing 85 miles per hour up Route 185, no matter how you look at it, that's not going to be acceptable. Right. So,
Yeah, make a note.
through our conversations and evaluations and critique, and we start to bring those parameters in. But it's a kind of a decent area of discretion.
Well, just to reiterate, I like our approach. I think it's excellent. I was just curious, why there was such a disparity between us and the surrounding towns, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah, I don't know.
was a COVID spike and,
Yeah, I don't know, and I have not engaged in conversations with the other chiefs about the particular reasons why. I know the things that we have dealt with here as an agency, and the variation in degrees of comfort, and how some of those have changed during. And sometimes our activity levels are, they change.
okay, thank you.
Moving on to our next item, new business. Does anyone have any new business to raise?
Just a question for the chief. There's a environmental push to let the air out of tires of big SUVs. Have we seen that here yet?
No, and why would that?
Well, they're trying to put an end, not put an end, make it hard for people who have big SUVs,
Yeah.
make it harder for them. Make them, they're sticking pieces of wood mostly into the valve stem and just letting the air out. And it's happened in other towns, in other states, and I just wonder if it's hit us yet.
I don't like that yet.
Yeah, I have not heard of that yet.
Great news,
Okay.
because we have one of them.
I don't know.
Just something else to be aware of.
Has anybody come up with a lock yet on that valve?
I'm not. But it's just, again, it's just one of those things that are out there.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay. Speaking of big SUVs, our Tahoes.
Yes, the Tahoes are in. You want to give a brief on that?
Oh, yeah, we took delivery of those finally a couple weeks ago, after many years of delays with those, a lot due to COVID also. So we're in the process of getting those upfitted, which is putting the emergency lights in and other safety equipment. Right now we have 3 other vehicles that we're working on, so these are kind of taking a back seat to that based on their schedule of the upfitter. So once we get those on the road, we'll be glad to show them. If you move it on later, take a look at them if you like, or you can come down there today, we'll show you.
If you need anyone to test drive.
Yeah, so far they look very promising. Heard a lot of good things and feedback from the officers, so they like it. Utilizing them for the supervisor vehicles will allow us to carry a lot more equipment in there, and just a little new getting on how we're going to set those up, because they're a lot bigger than the Ford Explorers. So just trying to see what's going to work for us and how to adapt to that. So we hope to have those out on the road by another month and a half or so, just to get those other vehicles all set up for us and going.
That's good news.
Yes, it is.
All right. Any other new business or ancillary business cars? Okay, then we will move to the next item on our agenda, our presentation this evening on sensitive investigations.
All right, just going to touch base briefly on our sensitive investigations that we handle in the Detective Bureau. I'm overseeing the Detective Bureau. Right now it consists of 2 detectives, Detective May, Detective Devin. They bring a lot of wealth and knowledge to the division. They're excellent at what they do. They don't leave any stone unturned, and you can see through these investigations that they conduct that they are quite lengthy, and for good reason why they are. You want to make sure you touch every basis on them. So some of the investigations that they handle of sensitive nature are juvenile investigations. We have Tim May, Detective May handles all our youth investigations, and that would be under anybody under the age of 18. And that's not necessarily that he handles all of them. It could be patrol can handle a call today involving a juvenile committing a larceny, and they can handle it amongst the parents and get a resolution with the victim and the parents on that there. But some of the other ones, like a serious assault that they're involved in or suspected other type of serious criminal activity, Detective May or Detective Devin will handle those.
And I'm sorry to interrupt here. Is Detective May, is he running our police academy program at the high school as well?
Nope, that is generally handled by our SRO at the high school, Officer Bertel. So at one time, Detective May did handle that,
Yeah.
but once he
Okay.
moved on to the Detective Bureau, it gets passed off onto the SRO at the high school, because that's the age group that fits into.
Yeah, sorry to divert.
No problem. So, and it's good reason why the detectives will handle the juvenile cases, because it's a lot of sensitive material going with those. Some of the other cases they handle are child abuse and neglect cases. All those will be handled by the detectives. We won't let people handle those. They can have partake in the investigation for some learning experiences, but ultimately they will handle that. And there's reasons why I'll touch base on that going forward. They could handle dating and family violence cases. A lot of those are handled by patrol because they're called to the scene and they take care of it right there. And they get the process moving. They make an arrest and move everybody on. But one of the things that one of the detective Devin will do is she will perform a case review of all family violence arrests just to make sure that the victim is being provided all the services that is available to them. We want to make sure that there's no stone unturned with those and we're getting them the services that they need. And sexual assaults, the detectives will handle all sexual assaults. So as far as these cases that come in, they mostly begin with a patrol officer out on the street. Very rarely will they come in and look for a detective. They always come in at on weekends or when the detectives aren't here. So the officer will take the initial complaint from the victim in that, and it's just going to be a basis of just minimal facts. We don't want to interview the victim at that time because we want to maintain the integrity of the investigation. So we'll just obtain minimal facts from them to make sure that they are safe, they're in a safe environment. And if they need to identify a location where the crime occurred and if there's evidence there, they can handle taking care of that because we don't want that evidence to be disturbed in any way. So we'll locate and identify all witnesses, compile some information for the detectives, complete a case report, and transfer it to the detectives for investigation. The detectives will conduct follow-up investigations. Their investigations are they're quite lengthy. Like I said, for good reason. We want to make sure that we're sensitive to the needs of the victim and that we're uncovering every possible piece of evidence we could to help support their case and provide them services. Most of our juvenile cases, well, all our juvenile cases are handled by the detective division, and if there are cases involving child abuse and neglect, we work with the multidisciplinary team in this region, and that consists of workers from DCF, the Corps, the state's attorney's office, and victim advocates. The reason for those is to make sure that we are not victimizing the child by re-interviewing them. So it used to be the old times the police would interview them, the medical professional would interview them, psychologist. We want a DCF, we'll interview them also. We all work together on that, present the case. They all have a piece in it, make sure that we're covering every basis on that. One interview is conducted, that's conducted at the Child Advocacy Center, Klingberg, which is called a forensic interview. The reason for the forensic interview is, like I said, they're not asking leading questions. It's court tested. They may feel that when we ask questions, we're asking leading questions to get the child to go into one direction. Conducting it with a trained forensic interviewer, it's conducted in a setting that's comfortable for the child, and it's more of a conversation with them and to find out, why they're here and what happened. I'll sort of backtrack to off track on that, talking about the MDT, but we can receive reports from child abuse or neglect right from DCF. We usually receive those reports within 12 hours after it's been reported to them, and that can be reported by a teacher, a caretaker, a doctor. Same thing with the police department. We have an incident involving a child abuse or neglect, and the family or household member is suspected, or caretaker is suspected of the abuse. We have to make our written report to DCF and a verbal report within 12 hours, written report within 24. And then a case officer will be assigned from DCF, and then we'll reach out to our detectives, and we'll work hand in hand on that. Back to the minimal facts interview, that's just to obtain what happened, where did it happen, and who was the perpetrator. If a child makes a disclosure to the parent, we're just going to talk to the parent and gather all that information from the parent and set up a forensic interview with the child, and that will be handled with the forensic interviewer. The detectives will be present. They won't be in the room with the interviewer on that. They'll be observing the interview from another room. And once the interview is done interviewing the child, they can come out and ask the detective if there's any follow-up questions that they have. So a great success with that, limiting the trauma to the juveniles in that. And you get everybody's input in that. You get to see a different side. That's something we may not see that they can bring up, and vice versa. So it's worked out really great. We've participated in that for quite some time now, maybe like 12 years or so, maybe even longer than that, 12 years or so. Detectives do a great job in that, attending all those meetings, conducting their follow-ups. They really do an excellent job in the investigation work that they do. That's about it on that. Any questions?
In the last decade, how many of these investigations have we been a part of?
What's that?
In the last decade, how many of these investigations have we been a part of?
I couldn't put a number on how many in the last decade. We do keep track of all of them. Offhand, I don't know that number. It's substantially going up because we get the services involved in a lot more of that. Just this past year, I think we've maybe done 5 so far.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at. That's the workload's about
Yeah, I'd say
3 to 5 every year is what.
a little more. I'd say like at least 1 a month.
Yeah.
That we get.
Yeah.
One sensitive or one involving juveniles?
Both.
It feels like when you see social media that they're trending upward quickly and often.
Yeah, it does happen. But it's hard to say what that's a result of. I could go back and look at the numbers last year and say that there was no reports or very few reports, and everybody will say it's because of COVID. But and that very well may be the case because they're not getting out there and getting the services, not visiting doctors or having appointments by the phone. They're not going into an office, so it's hard to say.
Who in the leadership command do these detectives report their findings from these sensitive investigations?
Do they report to me?
I don't know when we started with the MDT, the multidisciplinary team, but I think we have seen a huge benefit from that. You know, having somebody from the court, an advocate, DCF, all in the same room and reviewing cases. And you know, when we go to that, it's not any of us, but they're also reviewing cases from other jurisdictions. So you're learning at the same time and providing input. So you've got almost a group effort on reviewing these cases.
And I like the just not traumatizing the victim multiple times.
Right.
I mean, try and deal with it one time and do it smoothly.
Definitely.
Are members of the MDT available for external consultations, or is there cooperation, like, hey, I have a question about something, and even though it's not a case that's in front of them, are we able to use those as resources?
We could. We reach out to the prosecutor's office all the time in DCF. So they're always asking questions. It's beneficial for the investigation. Like Chief Wolfer said, it's always a learning process. You may learn one thing from one investigation, and you're able to bring it over to ours. So they conduct monthly meetings, and it's just a roundtable with all the cases that are on the agenda, and they're just making sure that the proper follow-up is being conducted.
So before you go to the next topic here, I wanted to circle back, Chief, as we head into the late spring, into the summer months. As a force here, are we, do we have any big challenges or obstacles ahead that you see as we gear up for summer events and that sort of thing?
Well, the pandemic is still here and on our minds, and what's sort of what's to come, or hopefully what's not to come. I think personnel-wise, I'm very optimistic that we're going to find 2 additions to the department pretty soon. And you know, whether they are certified elsewhere or we have to go through the academy, you know, I'm hoping that process happens as quick, if not quicker than the last 2. We're going to keep pushing to get at least 1, if not 2, traffic enforcement officers out there. And we have seen an increase in our activity that requires the detectives. So in order that we don't you know, delay any investigations, we're looking to try to fill that 3rd spot in the detective division as soon as possible. And so that just may require some juggling around of some assignments and some people. And you know, although it's not, you know, the 45 member department that we were looking for, the 2 is definitely helpful. And you know, we do know that there's going to be 2 out at least for the next couple of months, but we're going to move forward anyways and see, you know, see how this goes and see where we need to adjust along the way.
And do we have some pending retirement parties or not until?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Good.
You said the 3 detectives, and that reminded me the talk of 3 SROs at one point was if we were going to look.
Those talks will continue.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be beneficial down the line.
Has there been interest? And that was like the beginning discussion. Where... Any other questions, thoughts, concerns? In that case, I will move on to the final item on our agenda and ask if anyone has any motions.
Motion to adjourn?
So I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Our meeting is adjourned at 5.